Stand for a tale so grand. Shushan is the place where it all began. The hidden miracle.
You would not believe me how long it took to find an alternate Purim song. This was not my first choice, and nor was it my second, but there were not many options. Something catchy, something fun, something with a beat. That also wasn't for literal children, so I ended up with the Purim song by the Maccabees. And it's a shame that there really weren't any other alternatives, because Purim is unequivocally the best Jewish holiday there is. Hands down, no argument. Okay, maybe best is not the right word, but most fun. Yeah, that's a better word, fun. The fact that there aren't any TV or episodes or movies about Purim is honestly a travesty. It's a millennia-old holiday where the traditions are kind of a mishmash of the best aspects of the most fun holidays. Halloween, St. Patrick's Day, Mardi Gras. And so nobody's made a Day After Purim-esque hangover comedy or the story of Esther done in the style of The Prince of Egypt. That's bordering on anti-Semitism right there. We dress up, we tell stories, we drink, we eat. Why don't more people know about this? But the fact that there isn't really any mainstream Purim movies, and by that I mean non-Christian retellings, Book of Esther, that's just downright anti-Semitic. Hello, peoples of the internet. I'm Sam. This is Scoop's Corner, my own little part of the internet where you can hear me rant about the intersection of pop culture and Judaism, or really whatever I'm into at any given moment. And today, we're once again talking about Molly McGee.
It's the Ghost and Molly McGee.
In this case, the unproduced Purim episode. Last year, one of the Ghost and Molly McGee's writers, Brandon Hoang, revealed some of the concept episodes that went unproduced due to the series' premature cancellation. Those tweets have since been deleted. I don't know why. But there was one concept that caught my eye. A Purim episode. And it was fully scripted. Brandon, being an amazing human being, by the way, sent me the script to read via Twitter DMs. I loved it. I've been wanting to make an episode about this script since I've read it. Not only is it genuinely funny, it has a fairly realistic and age-appropriate depiction of anti-Semitism, which I haven't really seen in any show, let alone a children's show. He'll be joining us later for an interview about the inspiration and writing process behind the episode. Super excited about that, but let's get to the episode summary, analysis, and whatever else. I don't have a high viewership, and I don't really know who watches these videos, so we're gonna start out with what is Purim? Purim celebrates the victory of the Jews of Persia over Haman, the king's advisor who had been scheming to purge the country of Jews. Unbeknownst to the king, his new wife Esther was Jewish, and when she found out about the plot, she schemed with her, well, schemed is the wrong word. She and her cousin Mordecai devised a plan to alert the king and save the Jews. Esther prays for courage, like any good religious holiday, and eventually reveals not only Haman's plan, but also her identity as a Jewish woman. The king is pissed, Haman is hanged, and the Jews celebrate. That's a very short, abbreviated version of the story. There's other events involved, like Mordecai thwarting an assassination attempt, the king's original wife being killed or banished because she didn't want to strip down in front of her husband's buddies, Haman's personal vendetta against Mordecai, but none of those are relevant to the episode we're going to discuss. But seriously, it's a great story. It's got everything. How to celebrate. Purim is unique amongst the Jewish holidays. For one, it's one of the more cheerful ones. Every year, we reread the Megillah, which tells Esther's story. Whenever Haman's name is said out loud, we're supposed to drown it out. We clap, stomp our feet, shake noisemakers called groggers, whatever you want. A lot of people dress up. As you can tell, I'm kind of dressed up for this. They give baskets of food called mishloach manot. One food we eat are triangular cookies filled with like jam, and they're called hamantashen, which, depending on your translation or synagogue, translates to either Haman's ears or Haman's hat. It's to make fun of him. Drinking is encouraged. In the Talmud, which is basically commentary by a bunch of different rabbis and Jewish scholars throughout the ages, Rava, one of the most prolific scholars, said, a person is obligated to become intoxicated on Purim until they cannot distinguish between blessed be Mordechai and cursed be Haman. We can have debates all day on the level of drunkenness or whether or not one should get drunk at all, but we're gonna stick with Rava's interpretation. And after all the shit we Jews go through, we really deserve a fun holiday. Of course, there's usually some kind of carnival or fair. There are short plays called Purim spiels that are comedic and can be a retelling of Purim, but can also just be kind of about whatever. I once went to a Purim spiel where the actor who played Haman was dressed in bondage gear and was led around by a leash by the actress playing his wife. It was truly something, and an even more crazy Purim story in my opinion. Before my brother and I were born, my parents had moved cities and were looking for a synagogue. They happened to go to one that became my childhood synagogue on Purim. And when they got there, they found the rabbi was dressed as a pig. He even wore an apron that said Rabbi Hammerman. He was a great rabbi. He just recently retired. And honestly, even though I haven't been to Purim in that synagogue in years, I wish I could go see his costumes still, because he wore some ridiculous costumes for Purim over the years. There was one year, I distinctly remember him dressing up as a priest, and I think his wife was a nun. Like Party City costumes, but of all the costumes a rabbi chooses to wear on Purim, a priest is not usually one of them. Say what you want about him. He had a sense of humor. But back on track. The episode is called Saving Purim, and it's about Libby Stein Torres's mission to, well, save Purim. It's an allegory for the Purim story. Libby as Esther, and the antagonist is named Herman in the role of Haman. And throughout the episode, Libby is trying to celebrate Purim with all the other Jews in Brighton, and they keep getting stopped by Herman. He cites ridiculous rules or reasons as to why they can't celebrate, and eventually Libby is forced to argue for their right to party, right to celebrate, in front of the mayor. And the B-plot is about Scratch trying to replace a gift basket he devoured before Libby notices. There are a few very solid jokes in the episode that I really appreciated. My favorite gag was a flashback of Scratch meeting Elijah the prophet in the ghost world during a Passover Seder. Just kind of comes out of nowhere, and I just love it. If the show had continued, I really would have hoped we'd gotten a Passover special with Elijah as a protagonist or like a guest star or just appearing, because right now I'm just picturing Libby reacting and getting a huge case of the stress hives, because like the prophet who is supposed to herald the arrival of the Moshiach, the Messiah, reappeared flesh or ectoplasm, I guess, in my house. I'd probably freak out too. The anti-Semitism. I think, though, what really struck me most about the episode is its depiction of anti-Semitism. Though Brandon Hoang isn't Jewish, he does a really good job of depicting and understanding that anti-Semitism is kind of a particularly unique and insidious kind of discrimination that appears in many different ways. Because usually when discrimination isn't discussed in a kid's show or even an adult show, there's always a very distinct, very special episodes vibe. They're obviously trying to teach something. It's possible that things have evolved since I haven't seen a very special episode since like 2009, but while you could argue this episode of the Ghost and Molly McGee is a very special episode, it doesn't have the same vibes. It never calls out anti-Semitism by name, but the script makes it obvious that Libby and her congregation are being targeted for being Jewish, and that Herman basically borders on white supremacism. It's very Trump coded, very white supremacist coded. And there are other very real moments of anti-Semitism within the script that are very much reminiscent of actual anti-Semitic experiences all Jews have had at some point. Number one, when Mr. Herman, I don't know why I'm calling him that, I'm just gonna call him Herman, reveals that Libby's permit is no longer valid, the script emphasizes that he says the first half of her last name, Stein, with disdain. The turnip ball players in the same scene were granted an exception to play, being that the sport is culturally important to Brighton. Herman also says, I knew this festival would be trouble. And when the celebration moves to the bookstore, he files a noise complaint. I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be on his own behalf. He also emphasizes Stein when speaking to Libby's mother, very disdainfully. And he also says he's trying to better his town. And when Libby's mom tries to argue, it's our town too, he just smirks and says, for now. And he says Brighton needs to reaffirm its traditional values. Considering that's like 9 instances in a 14-page script, that's pretty impressive. Now, I could get into a whole explanation as to why each of these examples is anti-Semitic, but that'll take forever and ultimately isn't what this video is about. Besides, we have to leave time for the interview. My friends, Brandon Hoang.
Hi, I'm Brandon Hoang. I am a writer. I'm an author. I've written a couple of books right behind me. I was a staff writer on the Ghost and Molly McGee.
Very cool, very cool. So can you explain how you came up with the idea for the Purim special? What was the inspiration?
Yeah, I mean, there are Jewish holiday episodes out there, right? Everyone loves the Rugrats Passover episode, right? Like there's a few, right? And that's great. But I remember like just hearing from like my Jewish friends were like, hey, like we like the Hanukkah episodes, we love the Passover episodes, but those weren't like my favorite holidays growing up. And I remember asking, I was like, wait, what are there? Like, I just don't know that much about Jewish holidays, and they've always fascinated me. So I was like, oh, like what? Tell me, what do you wish that you could see on television that hasn't been done yet? And they're like, why has anyone done Purim? And I was like, what is that? I've never even heard of that holiday. And then the more I was explained to me, I was like, this is so ripe for not only animation, but for kids. It's such a fun holiday, and just the memories. And I just kept asking my friends. I would just be like, tell me more about it. Tell me like what you loved about it. And I was like, what is this holiday? This is wild. Like, why is it anyone? How am I an adult and like I've never heard about this holiday? And it just seems so fun, and I could just start getting the gears turning. And I think especially with the Ghost and Molly McGee, right? It became this thing where they would do a Jewish holiday episode every season. I was trying to get Purim into it. I was like, we got to do a Purim episode. We got to do a Purim episode. I want to be the first one to do it. So that was really like kind of like the idea of like why I was really pushing hard for like a Purim story.
Yeah, definitely. I wish there were more Jewish holiday episodes. I also think a really good one would have just been a Sukkot episode where everything just kind of goes wrong with them being outside and having to camp outside for a week.
See, I don't even know what that is. Like, I immediately want to run to look it up and what that is. You're right. I don't even know what that holiday is, but it sounds ripe already from what you just said. Sounds ripe for an animated telling of it or something.
Yeah. So what was the writing and research process for the episode like? Did it differ from your usual creative process?
Yeah, I mean, just the fact that I just didn't know anything about Purim. So I was like, how much do I want to go and like really be true to what it is? And it was a lot of just like, honestly, just talking to a lot of my Jewish friends, being like, tell me what is it about this holiday that meant so much to you, that brought up memories. I was actually reading an early draft of the script in preparation for this call, and my friend Tali, she sent me this really awesome photograph. She's like, oh, I was asking her about Purim, and she's like, oh, let me send you a photo. and it was one where they had it was like a stage performance that she had to do, and like there was like a little girl next to her dressed up as Esther, but then there was like a boy next to her dressed up as Peter Pan. There's like a pirate behind her. She dressed up as a skunk, and I was like, what does any of this have to do with Purim? She's like, well, Esther's the obvious one, but we just all kind of just wore our old Halloween costumes, and then we went to temple, and I was like, what? What are you talking about? And I just thought it was like such a fun visual to have for, again, an animated show. Like it would, definitely increase the production budget for having these characters in costumes, but how worth it would it be to do that? So it was a lot of like just me talking to my friends about asking like, hey, what was it about the holiday? It meant so much. I heard about the carnival games and just like it felt like this holiday, this like fun carnival holiday that was like kind of like Halloween, kind of because everyone dressed up in costumes, but it didn't make sense. But that it was kind of isolated from like what other like no one else outside the Jewish community knew what Purim was. So and then I was like, okay, let me read about the story of Esther because I was like, okay, I knew that when I wanted to do the story. I wanted Purim to be taking place in Brighton, and Libby was celebrating it. She was taking on the charge of hosting it in Brighton. I was like, if I really, really want this to sing, I want it to not only be Purim, but also have it like parallel the story of Esther. I was like, it's a tough task, but let me read about the story of Esther, see if it works. And I was like, it just a beautiful like melding happened where I was like, oh my gosh, like Libby can be Esther. The story is about bravery and I was like, oh, perfect. Libby already has this hang up about being scared and hiding to her shell. I was like, what a perfect way to tell the story. So it really came together in a really beautiful way. I thought it was like one of my favorite ones to write. Heartbreaking. I wish we would have done this one in season 2. I pushed really, really hard to do it in season 2, and it didn't make it. But I was so glad when they let me do it for season 3. But unfortunately, didn't get produced.
Yeah. So what was pitching it like?
It was kind of just like I had to kind of explain the holiday. No one on the writing, Madison and Perry are both Jewish. Perry was the writer's assistant, and she wrote a handful of episodes. And Madison's our story editor. They're both Jewish, so they both knew the holiday. And so when we were kind of, when you pitch a show and you're in the early seasons of it, you kind of there's like a whiteboard and you kind of throw up everything on the board, being like, hey, this could be an idea, this could be an idea, this could be an idea. And I was like, look, we've done all these Jewish holidays. We've established that this is a show that does Jewish holidays. Let's go outside the box. Let's do an episode of a holiday that no one has done yet. Let's do Purim, guys. Come on, let's be the first animated series to do Purim. And I think the guys were like, oh, interesting, okay. And then I was like, Madison, Perry, like, are you like, this is the thing, right? Like, can we do this? And they were like, oh, interesting. Never thought about that. Like, what are you thinking? And I kind of like what I just pitched to you. I was like, let's have Purim be in Brighton and have a parallel story. I don't know what that is yet, but like maybe there's a way to make it work. And Bill and Bob have always been great. They were always awesome about kind of letting us pitch wild ideas. And if we were really passionate about it, they'd be like, okay, go ahead, write something up, come back to us, let us know how it is. I think, again, at that point, I think I was a new writer on season 2. So you're kind of still like, hey, you're kind of meek and shy and kind of like throwing ideas. And I was kind of like, I was actually pretty pushy about it. I was like, we got to do Purim. We got to do Purim. I'm like, we don't know if we want to do that one for season 2, maybe season 3. And then when season 3 came around, we had the writing green light, which was just to write the stories. I was like, guys, remember Purim? You guys promised me if we got a season 3, I can write a Purim episode. And they were like, and they've been always great about this. They were like, yes, absolutely, Brandon. Go ahead, tell us what your pitch is, come back. And again, it just worked so well that I think that they were like, no brainer, let's put it into the rotation. And that's what got sold.
How did you come up with the idea as Herman as the antagonist?
Again, it was the idea about just being like, I wanted to have a new character. And I think it's not really a new character. They picked a character design that was in the crowds and like, oh, let's just make this guy the guy. And I was like, okay, I want to make someone it's Haman, right? It's Haman. We got to make him a jerk. He's an anti-Semitic jerk. And he's trying to again, he's not in the story. We got to find the parallels, right? Like he's not trying to exterminate the Jewish people like it was in the story of Esther. But we're like, okay, he's gonna try to use the law in his favor to basically just list all these regulations against why Libby shouldn't be hosting this holiday and slowly stop Purim from happening. And then he says a line, and I can't remember if it's stated in the script that's out there, but he basically says like, you won't have any holidays in Brighton as soon as I'm done with you, which is a way, which is if you're stopping people from telling their stories or stopping people from celebrating tradition and holidays, you are killing the holidays. You're killing the spirit and the tradition of doing it. With again, Herman, Haman, like that's any Jewish kid's gonna be able to make that connection of who I'm talking about. I even think I made him a road description like he wears like a dumb hat. Like so, I was like kind of like making these little things to him. So like that's really how the character came to be. I was just like, let's make a real jerk that's like leaning on law and order to get his like evil agenda passed.
Honestly, very topical.
Yeah, yeah, right. We need this now more than ever. Yeah.
So one thing I really liked with Herman in the beginning is with the script was he puts an emphasis on Stein.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm just like, that's something that would happen in real life. And it's not something that would necessarily be noticed by
Yeah.
other people, but
Yeah.
I also really like how it gets called out.
Yeah, I really want to make that a thing. It was like again, finding the ways to really show to the audience that this isn't about rules and regulations. It's about
Yeah.
getting rid of a Jewish holiday. And like so like he's got a problem like when he says, right, Libby Stein Torres, that's her name. He doesn't emphasize Torres, he goes Stein, right? For the exact reason. Like he's got a problem with her.
Still, my favorite part of the episode is just the gag with the ghost of Elijah during the Passover flashback. Do you think if the show had continued, you could have done a holiday special and included Elijah?
Look, number one rule in animation is if you can reuse a character more than once, then you've justified its budget. So I'm sure our line producers would have loved another like Elijah appearance. Yeah, it's funny because I think when I originally pitched it, it was a flashback where Scratch is late and he barges in and sits in Elijah's chair and like gobbles like a brisket and like chugs from a cup. And he's like, "Hey, where's this guy? He hasn't even shown up yet. Like, is he ever gonna show up?" Like, So I think that was the original joke. I can't remember how it changed in the new script, but yeah, it was a fun one, and I was like, "Oh, I hope they let us like make an Elijah character." So I'm glad that you enjoyed it because
Honestly, like the original joke would have worked really too. That has a very Jewish sense of humor. Like, I just keep picturing like Elijah appearing and then Libby has to deal with that because
yeah.
Elijah's like a big deal in Judaism, and she's just like, I'm not sure how to deal
Yeah,
with.
having a Libby actually encounter Elijah would be a funny. Like, again, there's like such good stuff. Like I don't even know what that would be, but I would love to like explore that. It's such a you're right. It seems like a natural thing that would happen. That would be do well and do naturally in the DNA of the show.
What was your favorite part of the episode?
I just loved how just in sync and perfectly the story of Esther just really paralleled what Libby was going through. Oh my gosh, I have to stand up to I have to I have to approach town hall with unannounced. You're not allowed to do that, right? How perfectly that goes of Esther having to go approach the king when not in that's you could die, right? She's worried about being put to death by approaching the king without being summoned, right? Anything with Libby is always just like so fun, and anytime that Libby comes out of her shell, so to speak, and is brave, is like such a fun thing to write for her. So her being able to go up to but she does give this big speech at the end where she's like, hey, like this is a holiday that's important. You can't do this to us. And I think it was just also just fun. Like it's always fun writing a villain, and Molly McGee doesn't have that many villains, so I was like, "Ooh, let's really lean into this. Like, let's make Heyman a real jerk." I think there's a part where he tries to like top Libby by being like, "Don't listen to her song, listen to mine." He like tries to like fake rap, and it's like comes off as really like uncool. They do like the Groggers, right? Like they always like have the Grogger. And it like interrupts him, and the whole town starts doing it, and they interrupt him, and they chase him out of town, and then I just love the beast. The other part was I love the B story with Scratch, and that was just a lot of fun having to. Again, it just works so perfectly. Him eating the basket and being like, "Oh no, I ate Libby's basket. She was supposed to give it to someone special, and I ate it." And he has no idea, of course. And he stresses about it. And he tries to make things right, and then but ends up the basket was supposed to go to him the entire time. The gag where Jeff is Jewish and Scratch had no idea the entire time is also just a very funny thing because Scratch is always just so oblivious to what's going. If it's not about him, it just goes over his head. So and I think Madison just loved I think she cracked up and she's like, I love that we're making Jeff Jewish and that Scratch had no idea the entire time. There was so many parts of that script that I loved, but those are some of my favorite parts.
So how did you find the balance with Herman, like between making him a jerk, making it believable, but still kind of appropriate for a children's show?
I think it's a lot of like implication, right? Like I think kids can parse that stuff out. You don't need to like always be so on the nose with everything. Like big kids can get on like pretty what he's trying to do. I think just how goofy and like we made him like again with his stupid hat and like
Bad rapping.
the bad rapping, you know what I mean? Like you're like you kind of like this guy's just an insecure nerd. Yeah, you're so like uncool, man. Like we want you to fail. We want you, and you have clearly have this evil agenda. So yeah, it was. I'm trying to think of the balance. Yeah, I mean, it was a balance of just like trying to make a villain that we don't like, but we're also at the same. It's a comedy show too, right? So you're finding the moments where like some of the stuff he does, some of the stuff he says, like he's trying to cancel Libby's Purim celebration by she's not up to code, fire code. All those turtles count as a person, and it's like that's just silly, right? It's a silly thing, but he gets away with it. So that I mean, that's a good example of a kind of that balance of pure evil and like goofy evil, right?
What projects are you working on now?
I'm still doing I have some projects in development. I'm still doing work, development stuff for animation. So still doing that. I'm officially in development with Warner Brothers on some stuff. I'm doing books still. As I mentioned, I'm a book author. So I have a Minecraft book coming out this year. I have some comic stuff. I'm doing some Avatar comic stuff with Dark Horse, and I'm hoping to sell. I have a graphic novel called The Secret of Aethria, The Inventor's Eye. It's like a sci-fi fantasy adventure that's coming out with Top Shelf either this year or next year. So
In the future, are there other Jewish holidays that you would like to explore if you write in TV shows, or would you like to take the Purim concept and adapt it to a new show?
yes, I would love to do Purim again. I know it's been one of those things where like you just keep hearing it that I've been wanting to do Purim for years. I've just been like, I don't, is this opportunity ever going to come up? And I was and with Molly, it just seems so perfect. I was like, this is my chance to do it. Yeah, but I think you're right. I mean, if there is another, if I ever get staffed on another show and there's an opportunity to do Purim, I'd love to do Purim. As far as other holidays go, the one you just mentioned, I remember that, but like that one is ripe for a animated television telling of it. Like, I think I would do the same thing. Like, I would probably talk to my Jewish friends and be like, what do you want to see? What have you not like? I'd probably shoot an email to you being like, Sam, what do you want to see? What are some holidays that haven't been covered yet that you would love to see? I don't know who leaked those scripts out there. It wasn't me, but I'm glad that people that are really like big Ghost and Molly McGee fans got a chance to read those stories because we were crushed that we didn't get a third season to hopefully have people read our work. And I'm glad the Perm episode resonated with you.
Yeah, it would have been great. Well, again, thank you so much.
All right, thanks, Sam.
I wish this episode had been made and aired because especially in today's climate where anti-Semitism and other kinds of discrimination are on the rise, we need these episodes talking about these really tough subjects, even for kids. I mean, that episode of Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur about the trans character, we're so lucky that that episode got leaked rather than erased from the history because it's a really good episode. It's really good, and it talks about a topic that needs to be talked about. And I think anti-Semitism, frankly, gets very under-discussed. That's a topic for another day. Anyway, thank you all for watching. I know this was a fairly short video, but I needed to get it in before Purim. So thanks to everyone who's watching. Please like, comment, subscribe. I promise I am trying to get on a more consistent posting schedule. Thanks!